suspended Awami League's registration under government's directive. It's not only Awami League, the another popular party, Jatiyo Party, 14-party alliance, these parties are under threat. They cannot maintain their democratic rights in Bangladesh at the moment. The religious extremism has increased tremendously, and also it is destroying the regional and local stability. More than 300 suspects have been granted bail despite of serious charges. Media censorship, Bangladesh has never experienced this sort of media censorship in the last 54 years after its inception. Censorship is in 184 journalists accredited caste has been removed. 266 journalists implicated fabricated murder cases. 14 famous journalists have been arrested on false cases. Media houses are facing threat of vandalism or shutdown, or they are taking occupancy of the media houses. Civil rights and public freedom are violated. Citizens' personal freedom are under attack. Not only that, the economy is going down as well. At least 353 factories, especially garments factories, were closed in 1 year, resulting loss of around 120,000 jobs. There is no National Human Rights Commission in Bangladesh at the moment. It was dissolved in November 7, 2024. Additional to that, the educational life of the more than 200,000, the future of our nation, is disturbed, and also thousands of professionals, including 800 lawyers, are being harassed in fabricated cases. But Dr. Yunus, he is actually expanding his business empire and his wealth. If you see that he has taken away about 666 crore imposed on Gramin Kalyan, that was waived. Tax exemption granted to Gramin Bank for next 5 years, that is until 2029. And the government ownership of the Gramin Bank significantly reduced from 25% to 10%, which is about 15-16 crore per year. Taka. Approval granted for a digital wallet for his Gramin telecommunication. He has taken permission of a manpower export license and also established a university. And Gramin Sterling is a partnership between the Gramin Bank and the Sterling, what he is doing at the moment. But the human rights organization, especially the organization we depend on, the Human Rights Commission report published on 12th of February 2025, this report has not been edited accordance with the United Nations editorial standard. They have confessed that. Methodological limitation and weakness is there, defect validation process, and biased information. One of our GCJD director, Professor Rashid, is going to present on that and show that he will do a critical analysis on that. We'll see that afterwards. So we have some recommendation from this conference that the full restoration of the civil, political, religious right and the protection of the fundamental freedoms. The judiciary must be independent and free from political interference to ensure equal justice for all. All reported killings, detention, torture, and violence against women, children, minorities, and the political opponents must be investigated fairly and transparently. Every victim deserves justice. We strongly condemn media censorship and attacks on the journalists. We call for an immediate end of intimidation, imprisonment, and censorship, and demand full free expression and protection of all journalists. We need united action against extremism, especially religious extremism, promoting inclusive governance, human rights, regional cooperation to ensure lasting peace and stability in Bangladesh and the broader South Asian region. The urgent need for an include free, fair, and transparent national election under a neutral and credible caretaker government, ensuring the participation of all political parties and restoring public confidence in democratic institutions. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Millat. Thank you for your thoughtful presentation. And it shows the grim realities that 180 million people of Bangladesh are going through today. And this is a precursor to a failing state. At this point in our conference, we'll go directly to our first topic of discussion, the rise of religious extremism and religious regional instability. And it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Ambassador Veena Sikri, who served as the Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh during 2003-2006 time period. Until the recent upheaval, that was perhaps the most turbulent one in post-independence Bangladesh's history. I will request Ms. Professor Veena Sikri on this topic of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing me so well. Thank you to the Global Center for Democratic Governance, to Dr. Mohammed Yavi Millat for organizing this conference and for inviting me to speak. It is really tremendously disturbing to see all the facts and figures that have been assembled and have been presented just now, even in the last 15 minutes, of the terrible events that have been taking place in Bangladesh over the last 1 year, over the last 15 months. And in fact, we have been watching this with great concern, with great trepidation. And I think the time has come not only to present these facts and figures, to think of the ways in which they can be given either to the Human Rights Commission or to the UN General Assembly, to the UN specialized committees, First Committee, and so on. Absolutely, convince people that this is really the situation, because what has happened is, in fact, all the discussions that we've been having over the last 1 year and 15 months, there is a great deal of skepticism globally and, in fact, in the individual countries on the veracity of all these figures. And everybody seems to be just believing what Professor Mohammed Yunus is saying and not giving any attention to these figures. So now the biggest task before the Global Center for Democratic Governance and all the other eminent individuals who are here today is to consider how these facts and figures can be accepted by the international community, and according to that, action has to be taken. So while you have a kind of a fake trial going on within Bangladesh before the ICT, and without any kind of presentation by those who have been accused, you have so many members of parliament in jail, you have so many leaders in jail with no charges being filed, but across the world the impression is totally different, and you only hear one word about the fascist government. So I think that today the media faculty, the communications, has to be really strengthened so that all these the myths that have been perpetrated for the last 15 months are exposed. I think the very first myth that we have to look at, which has actually led to all this rise in religious extremism and regional instability, is the myth that what happened last year was the result of a spontaneous student uprising. We know now that this uprising was neither spontaneous nor was it led by students. And in fact, the revelation on this came from Professor Mohammed Yunus himself when he spoke last year in September in New York at the Global Clinton Initiative and said that, don't think that this happened just like that. This was meticulously planned. And he introduced the person whom he described as the mastermind, which was Mr. Mahfouz Alam, who was at that point his special assistant and later became an advisor to the government. So I think that the very fact that Dr. Mohammed Yunus himself has publicly spoken about this being a meticulously planned operation should be highlighted, but it has never been spoken about since that time. So I think that this is some of the points that we have to speak about very clearly. Then the question about the constitutional legitimacy of this government. I mean, has that been, taken up in any forum? The chief advisor and the other advisors were sworn in on the constitution of Bangladesh, which at that point and even till today does not allow any kind of interim government. So I think this whole question about what it is there and what it has been doing are something that needs to be talked about much more widely. I think the third myth is that even if you assume that an interim government, because there have been certain decisions in the Supreme Court, that the interim government is going to be there, their role is only for 90 days and to arrange a free, fair, inclusive and credible election with the participation of all the political parties, and not to take any major decisions. But as against this, we have seen that for the last 15 months, there has been every possible excuse being made to delay the elections. And even now, we know that the elections were then planned actually for only the middle of next year, but now under public pressure of the political parties themselves, and even at one stage of the army, they have been promised to be held in the month of February, before the month of Ramadan starts. But at the moment, there is no preparation at all. And this question of excluding any political party does not even arise. Because let me give you two examples. There is the example of Sri Lanka, where again there was a huge public outcry against the Rajapaksa government, and there was the Rajapakshas resigned and so on. But afterwards, the groups who were protesting went back to parliament. They appointed an interim president, and the elections had been held. Now, was there any talk at any point of banning any political party? Not at all. All the political parties, even the Rajapaksa family's own political party, which was under so much attack, has taken part in the elections. Similarly, in Nepal, we do see that even though Prime Minister Oli has resigned, and the elections are now planned in the month of March, but there's no talk of banning any political party. There was so much furor against Prime Minister Oli's government and so on, but his party is going to take part in the elections like everybody else. So I think there is absolutely no reason or question why the issue of banning the activities of the Awami League, or the Election Commission issuing some kind of suspension on the Awami League and removing their symbol from the website of the Election Commission, all this is completely illegal. All this shows that there's nothing except anarchy in Bangladesh. There has been mobocracy for the last 15 months, and this has led to complete anarchy. There is no system of governance at all. And that is why, because the original event, which was the removal of Sheikh Hasina, was led it was conducted by Pakistan through the Jamaat-e-Islami of Bangladesh, with the support of external powers and with China in the know. We know that from that very moment that it's a Jamaat-e-Islami who is determined to come back to power. And every event in Bangladesh is being catered just for that objective. And this is the reason why religious extremism has risen in Bangladesh to this incredible level and unacceptable level. And we've seen today that we know that now even the radical preacher Zakir Naik is being invited to speak in Bangladesh for 1 month at the end of November onwards. Now, Zakir Naik was actually banned by the government of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, because on 1st July 2016, when the absolutely horrific terrorist attack took place, the Holy Artisan Bakery attack, the people who were involved in that attack, the terrorists who committed that attack, they accepted that they had been radicalized by Zakir Naik. And after that, Sheikh Hasina's government had banned Zakir Naik. But now there's been no indication whether the ban has been removed, and he has been invited to come to Bangladesh and give some more radicalizing speeches. And I think I can only think that the reason why this is being done, because the Jamaat-e-Islami has not got the support that they expected from the people of Bangladesh. They were thinking all this while that, the Awami League is going to be banned, the BNP has been marginalized, and all the political support will come to the Jamaat-e-Islami. And the other group that thought that they would get the political support is the National Citizens Party. But they have, formed a party, but they have no political support. Even in the recent elections in the universities, they just did not, they were nowhere. There was no standing for them. So if they are a genuine students' party, then one would imagine that they would have support from students. But this is no longer at all true. It's evident that this is not true. So all that we are seeing today is a rise in religious extremism in a bid to ramp up support for the Jamaat-e-Islami. And I think that, this indication of Zakir Naik coming to Bangladesh is absolutely shocking and unacceptable. Before this, on October 25th, we had other preachers from the Ahle-Hadith from Pakistan and the supporters of the Lashkar-e-Taiba leaders and so on. They were there, and they've been even visiting the bordering areas between Bangladesh and India and giving rabble-rousing speeches over there. So all this has certainly led to an extraordinary rise in religious extremism, and it has made the people of Bangladesh very unhappy, because while the people of Bangladesh are deeply religious, they do not want any kind of extremism. And this is what Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had done her best to make sure that there was no spread of religious extremism of any kind, even though all these groups were active even at that time. And I think that the worst expression of this rise of religious extremism happened from the very day that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina left Dhaka, which is the attack on all the religious minorities. The Muslim and the non-Muslim religious minorities have been under tremendous attack, and there have been rapes and lynchings and genocide, and businesses have been destroyed, lands have been grabbed, and individuals are being forced to convert at an alarming rate in Bangladesh. All this because the religious minorities, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, and even the Sufis and the Ahmadiyas, they are determined to stay on as citizens of Bangladesh. They're saying, we're not going to leave the country. We are citizens of this country. But this is not being accepted by the members of the extremist groups, including the Jamaat-e-Islami, including the Islami Chhatra Shibir. And when this is pointed out to Muhammad Yunus, all he says that this is fake news from India. That's all. Even recently, 2 or 3 weeks ago, when he was in New York for the UNGA, he was interviewed by several people, and each time he said, oh no, this is all fake news, it's not happening. So what I'm saying is that now that all this information has been collated and published by the Global Center for Democratic Governance, I think it needs to be really disseminated very widely and brought to the notice of all the people who have been following this. I know that the Aino Salish Kendra and others are doing tremendous work in collecting this information, in collating it, and now it's been published, and the people of Bangladesh, all the minorities, they're determined to stay on there, they're determined to exercise their rights as citizens. So their participation in the elections, the way in which their jobs have been taken away, their professorships, their teaching assignments, everything is forcing them into a life of penury, which is absolutely unacceptable. Only 2 weeks ago, we saw the terrible incidents in Khankachari, in the Chittagong hill tracks, where again the same incidents of rapes and killings were happening, and the people are absolutely in a tremendously disheartened condition, but they're enormously brave because they're not leaving the country at all. We do realize that that all this has the potential to really harm the regional stability of South Asia, and we do know that, and I can say for myself that I have seen a lot of these events taking place during the time when I was High Commissioner, because that was the time when Begum Khalida Zia was the Prime Minister, and she was, the Jamaat-e-Islami was a member of the alliance, and Pakistan was exercising the same kind of influence and control on Bangladesh and the government that they are doing today. So a lot of this is deja vu for me. I've seen this happen before. I've seen the way in which at that time so many terrorist attacks in India originated from Bangladesh. We saw the Pakistani people flying into Bangladesh, entering without any evidence of their entering, and walking across into India, because at that time the border fencing and all was in a much poorer condition than it is today, and then they would commit terrorist acts in India. So this is how the regional instability is happening. And I can tell you another thing that is leading to tremendous regional instability is the absolutely provocative and unacceptably provocative statements that are being made in Bangladesh time and time again by Dr. Muhammad Yunus, and by the Jamaat-e-Islami, by many individual students about Northeast India. We know that Dr. Muhammad Yunus, when he went to China in the month of April this year, he actually addressed a group of Chinese businessmen and invited them to come to Bangladesh and say, look, we have control over Northeast India. We are the only ones who have access there. Come on, we will take you there. We will give you the access. I mean, this was, absolutely a kind of a deliberately provocative statement. And then we have seen all these maps, recently a kind of a book with an artistic, so-called stylized map showing parts of Northeast India and Bangladesh. We saw these maps coming up even in Dhaka University during the Pehla Baishakh celebrations. We've seen tweets by members who are in various political formations, the NCP and others, Jamaat-e-Islami and others, which are talking about what's going to happen to the Northeast. All these are intended to provoke the Indian insurgent groups and to invite, telling them, yes, come to Bangladesh, we are here to help you. Again, this is exactly what was happening between 2003, 2006 when I was there. There was a similar support being given to all the Indian insurgent groups at that time, and through that there was every effort to create instability in Northeast India and other parts of India. Now, I think that we are seeing all this happening again. We are seeing that these efforts are there, but the government of India has exercised a great deal of strategic restraint in dealing with Bangladesh. In fact, right from the very beginning, the message from our leadership was that we are prepared to continue the economic cooperation with Bangladesh that had such a great success under the 15 years of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, because Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina accepted India's security red lines and she said, I'm not going to support any insurgent groups. There's no question of having any such groups who do not help the people of Bangladesh at all. So for the last 15 years, there was complete peace and development in Northeast India. There was complete full cooperation between India and Bangladesh. And the result for Bangladesh was that they had 6.5% to 7% annual rate of growth, leading to Bangladesh's graduation from the least developed country status. And as against this, you have in 1 year, Bangladesh has slipped fully back, so that their whole graduation process has now been postponed, and there is going to be no longer any such possibility because the Bangladesh economy is in a state of collapse. But I don't think this seems to bother the current leadership in Bangladesh at all. Perhaps some political parties and others think that if there's poverty in Bangladesh, it's easier to control the population. And that's why they're just not bothered about the economic situation. All they're interested is in getting military training, in getting specialized equipment coming in having all kinds of exercises which were never there before. And this is causing a great deal of regional instability, which is not going to be good for Bangladesh at all. And I think that the government of India has conveyed, even when our Prime Minister Modi met Dr. Muhammad Yunus in Bangkok on the sidelines of the BIMSTEC summit, there was a clear indication that rhetoric and vitriol does not help the relationship at all. It does not contribute to peace and stability and development. It only worsens the atmosphere and leads to instability. So the combination of this phenomenal rise in religious extremism, it has had a tremendous negative impact on freedom of the people, on freedom of women, on the rights of women, on the development of the country. And all this is geared only to make sure that somehow or the other the Jamaat-e-Islami comes to power in Bangladesh. There are countries in the world, in the West, who still think that Jamaat-e-Islami is a moderate Islamic democratic party. But I think it's shown by its behavior all along that it is anything but. So I think that one of the big tasks of this conference, this has been a tremendously successful effort to organize this conference, and I can see that there's a very large participation, and I feel honored to be participating myself. That we have to all ensure that the elections are held on time, that they're held under international supervision, that there is a new caretaker government, within as has been the practice in Bangladesh of having caretaker governments, because the current one is shown itself to be totally ineffective and unable to run the country. And under the new caretaker government, there should be free, fair, inclusive, and credible elections with international supervision. I think this is the only way out, because whoever is able, and all the political parties must be able to participate. There's no question of excluding any political party or organization. There's no question of keeping people in jail for so long without even any charges. There's no question of continuing the oppression of minorities. In fact, this should be exposed, so that the question, very dismissive way in which Dr. Mohammed Yunus says this is fake news coming out of India, this should be completely exposed, so that the facts and figures about the people who have lost their lives, their land, their liberty, their freedom should be there before everybody. And I think that once the resolution of this conference is known, then everybody would certainly be willing to work together. Certainly in India, there's a great deal of interest and a great deal of concern about what is happening in Bangladesh. And we do hope that this conference, this publication of the documents, will be the first step towards getting the world to accept and speak out about the reality of where Bangladesh is today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Veena Sikri, for your very thoughtful presentation about the facts on the ground, which is extremely grim. And you perhaps already know very well that during your time, when there was 10 trucks arms smuggling case was there, and the two key accused, the mastermind, Major General Rizakul Haider Chaudhary and the State Minister of the Home Affairs, Lutfuzzaman Babur, they're all released from the jail. So it's a clear indication that they want to instigate, some sort of fight with India in the Northeast region. So thank you again, and we will request you to continue raising your voice on behalf of 180 million people of Bangladesh. Thank you very much. Our next guest speaker is Mr. Chris Blackburn. And Chris doesn't need any introduction to the inter-South Asian community, because he's the leading voice of human rights advocacy and minority rights advocacy from Afghanistan to Myanmar, and especially now for Bangladesh. Chris Blackburn has over 2 decades of experience in geopolitics, intelligence, and communication strategies, and he's currently serving as the communication director of European Bangladesh Forum. Chris Blackburn, it's your turn, please.
Thank you for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to Professor Millat and the organisers. We are proud to be part of this conference. Violence, once the tool of the desperate, is becoming the instinct of the impatient. We now live in an era where rumour outruns reason, grievance is monetised, and identity is weaponised. Across the world, societies are learning that violence never stays contained. It crosses borders, corrodes institutions, and weakens our moral reflexes. Nowhere is this truer than in Bangladesh today. Since the fall of Sheikh Hasina, what began as a promise of democratic renewal has been overshadowed by fear and factionalism. People are scared. We've seen infighting within the BNP, which is supposed to take over the reins of power in February if there is an election. And the violence and the rhetoric is spilled into the streets. We have seen interfactional fighting and murders tied to internal rivalries. This is no reform. We've also seen the targeting of women, minorities, and journalists, not as bystanders to politics, but as deliberate targets of it. Radical Islamist groups, some linked to Jamaat-e-Islami, have re-emerged with renewed confidence. They have stopped women's football matches, intimidated women's commissions, and attacked cultural programs. Because nothing threatens an extremist more than a woman with authority and visibility. Some media houses in Bangladesh have been branded pro-India to justify harassment and violence, and in some circles, reckless talk about nuclear proliferation and territorial expansionism is creeping into public discourse, as if threatening civilization itself were a clever negotiating tactic. This is not politics. This is arson and historical revisionism disguised as reform. But none of this appeared overnight. The ground for today's extremism was prepared long ago. Bangladesh was born in 1971 as a rejection of religious intolerance and as a moral verdict against those who have used faith to divide. Yet the movements that opposed that secular vision rebuilt themselves over time. Jamaat-e-Islami re-established its network. Its student wing, the Islamic chapter Shrabiya, infiltrated campuses, madrasas, charities, and media outlets, which became conduits of influence and recruitment. Over the decades, new militant formations emerged: the Harkat-ul-Jihad al-Islami, HJB, the Jamaat al-Mujahideen Bangladesh, JMB, and later groups inspired by Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Each of these groups learned to adapt, become decentralized, less visible, more embedded in social and digital networks. Other groups, such as Hafizat-e-Islam, perfected the art of toggling between pulpit and protest. Under the banner of moral guardianship, they have normalized fear by attacking textbooks, statues, and women's visibility in public life. They have redrew the boundaries of what was deemed acceptable in Bangladeshi society. Now, four forces made this possible. First, instrumental politics. Mainstream parties cut quiet deals with hardliners for short-term gains. Second, financial and ideological patronage. Money and legitimacy from Gulf donors, local elites, and from charities within North America and Europe that built a parallel welfare and education system within Bangladesh. Third, there was general impunity, selective justice that taught extremists that they could act without consequence. And we've seen this more from the administration of Muhammad Yunus, where he is frightened to challenge the extremists, whether it be the student extremists who've called for constant mobocracy in Bangladesh, or from radical Islamists who've tried to shut down debate. The fourth is digital radicalization, online platforms that have turned grievance into identity and outrage into belonging. We now face the results of all of this within Bangladesh. We've seen that women's sport is under attack because it symbolizes equality. Women's commissions are targeted because they turn rights into institutions. Minorities are assaulted because they are easy scapegoats. And journalists are smeared because truth is the first casualty of authoritarian movements. And the casual talk of nuclear weapons reflects the intellectual emptiness of those who cannot govern and so resort to intimidation. It's a pattern. This isn't random violence, but a strategy to control the national conversation through fear. If they cannot win the argument, they will simply burn the stage. And we've seen this with attacks on Prothom Alarm, and we've seen it on the attacks of the Daily Star. But some say this turmoil has been temporary, that Bangladesh will find its balance again. But that assumption is dangerous. Bangladesh sits at the crossroads of South and Southeast Asia. It influences India's northeast, the security of the Bay of Bengal, and the management of refugee inflows from Myanmar. Extremism in Bangladesh does not stay within its borders. It spreads through ideology, funding, and transnational networks. We have seen this before. Rajab Karim, a Bangladeshi who was connected to GMB and Al-Qaeda, tried to infiltrate British Airways in Newcastle upon Tyne, my hometown, to carry out a terrorist plot. We've also saw radicalization, and we've seen the global consequences. We saw it when Jamaat charities in Europe and North America used to send zakat to Al-Qaeda fronts, knowing fine well they knew who their partners were. Now, this was a breakdown and a problem on our side. Our intelligence agencies and security authorities were slow to react. So when political actors in Dhaka start entertaining talk of nuclear weapons or expansionism, or to kickstart what happened during the early 2000s when we saw the destabilization effort in Assam and other regions, it sends shockwaves far beyond South Asia. It undermines regional diplomacy. It raises the risk of miscalculation by all sides and invites potential foreign intervention under the guise of stability operations. In a densely populated region with short flight times, long memories, recklessness is not a strategy. It is the path to self-destruction. So what must be done and done now? First, there should be the end of the politics of muscle, which we've talked about for decades now in Bangladesh. Bangladesh's parties must disarm. Their student wings can't be like militant wings. And there needs to be an enforcement and a zero tolerance policy for street violence and agitation. Registration and public funding should depend on compliance. And if people want a seat at the table, they need to put down their weapons. Second, it's the protection of women and minorities as a matter of national security. Attacks on women's football, commissions, and minority communities must be prosecuted swiftly and visibly, not brushed under the carpet or said to be disinformation campaigns by India. The credibility of the state depends on its ability to defend those most at risk, and UNIS is failing this. Third, we need to defend the press. Make violence and intimidation against journalists a serious, separate crime. There needs to be a creation of an independent mechanism, whether it be through a human rights commission, which is led by civil society and overseen by the judiciary, that investigates threats and acts within days, not months. Because a state without a free press is a state without early warning systems. Fourth, we need to cut off the money and the megaphones to the extremists. They need to be and Sheikh Hasina was good at auditing and looking at how the sort of international revenue streams of extremist organizations took place and shutting them down. So the enforcement and transparency within religious charities and media networks needs to be made in Bangladesh. But what we've seen from Mohammed Yunus and the interim government is that these problems weren't a thing, or that they were used by Sheikh Hasina to justify authoritarian rule. That is simply not the case. The British High Commissioner was actually attacked by these extremists. So for Mohammed Yunus to do this historical revisionism is quite a dangerous precedent, especially when we're seeing and reading throughout Bangladesh's media about the efforts of extremist Islamist organizations to try to dominate the rest of society. Finally, they need to act responsibly in the region. Bangladesh, India, and their partners must deepen cooperation, whether it be through BIMSTEC on counterterrorism, refugee management, or cooperation in maritime security. The world must draw a line on nuclear rhetoric. Those who indulge in it must face sanctions and isolation, not applause in Bangladesh. Bangladesh's destiny is not hostage to the loudest voices. This is a nation that has built itself after wars, coups, and cyclones. It's sent its daughters into the classrooms, its sons into global industries, and its workers to every corner of the world. It deserves leaders who defend that resilience, not exploit it. So let us remember, a woman playing football is not a threat to tradition. She is proof that tradition can evolve. Journalists asking hard questions is not being pro-India or pro-Awami League. They are pro-accountability. A minority family that sleeps safely at night is not a concession. It is civilization itself. It is Bangladesh itself. And anyone who speaks lightly of this nuclear weapons or territorial expansion should have no place in serious politics. Violence may be the language of the impatient, but democracy remains the grammar of endurance. Bangladesh can still choose that grammar to build its institutions, protect its freedoms, and restore faith in law over force. The world has a stake in that choice. When Bangladesh chooses stability and reform, the entire region breathes easier. So let us help Bangladesh make that choice firmly, quickly, and without apology. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Chris, for your valuable comments. And you are a leading voice of reason across the globe for minority rights and human rights, and especially against extremism of all sorts. And definitely you will agree that Jamaat, if the West take it very lightly, we are heading towards another disaster, because they now got a ground in Bangladesh under the leadership of Dr. Yunus, which is very unfortunate. So their ideological game plan is dangerous and disastrous. And you will agree that they are the ideological grandfather of Taliban's and the father of Al-Qaeda. So West must take it very seriously. Thank you, Chris, again. Our next guest is Dr. Rafael Pankowski. He's a Rotary Peace Fellow at Makerere University in Uganda. Professor Pankowski is a Polish sociologist and political scientist. And I must add that when Les Wałęsa-led solidarity movement was going on in Poland, and I was a little kid, and I was mesmerized by how peaceful that movement was, and I'm mesmerized how destructive these Gen Z movements are. So as a sociologist, someday we'll read your comments on this. But now on the issue of religious extremism and regional instability.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, namaskar. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, greetings from the Rotary Peace Center at Makerere University, Kampala, Uganda. My name is Rafał Pankowski, and I'm a sociologist as well as a human rights activist. I come from Poland. I am currently in Uganda, and it is a real honor to participate in this very important global conversation. What brings us all together from across the world today is, of course, the love of Bangladesh, its people, its culture, its heritage. It is also the love of the history of Bangladesh. But I think there is also much more. It is our shared commitment to the universal values of human rights, and I think the three countries I have just mentioned, Bangladesh, Poland, and Uganda, they are, of course, quite different in many ways, and they are distant from each other if we look on the map. But they also have something in common. It is, for example, the history of the fight for freedom and the legacy of the fight for their own specific and inclusive, at the same time, identity. In the case of Bangladesh, of course, it is the legacy of the struggle for language rights, as well as especially the liberation war. In the case of Uganda, it is the anti-colonial struggle, but also the struggle against the tyranny of Idi Amin. In the case of Poland, it is, for example, the tragic experience of Nazi occupation during World War II and the struggle against fascism, as well as against totalitarianism. Today, we face a common global challenge of the rise in violent extremism, radicalization, authoritarian and intolerant anti-minority movements and regimes. And I believe what is common in terms of the global challenge for all of us today is the specter of fascism that is hanging over our planet. And I'm afraid that includes Bangladesh today. Fascism can be defined in many different ways, but I believe one way of defining fascism is the following. It is an ideology, it is a vision of total cultural homogeneity. It is a vision of a society where there is no place for diversity. There is no place for minorities of any type, be it ethnic, be it religious, be it political. And an organization of which I have been a co-founder, the Never Again Association, is committed to the struggle against fascism understood as organized intolerance. And this is a struggle that is international, this is a struggle that is global, and this is a kind of struggle that I believe is very, very highly relevant to Bangladesh today. And over the years, I have met many brilliant people, many inspiring people in this struggle, in the international human rights movement. But one of them who really stands out for me is our dear friend from Bangladesh, Shahryar Kabir, who, among other things, has written dozens of books on very important topics, including a very important and a very interesting book about the experience of solidarity in Poland and the peaceful transformation to democracy in Poland and across the former Soviet bloc, which I think is something that is very relevant and important for me to mention here today. And Shahryar Kabir, in many ways, for me, is the symbol of the movement for minority rights, for human rights, for peaceful solutions, both in Bangladesh and internationally. What is also very important in terms of the many years of positive campaigning by Shahryar Kabir is the struggle against genocide denial, which I believe is not only important for Bangladesh, but it is also very important globally, internationally, vis-à-vis all the different cases of genocide across the world. And I believe it is highly ironic and it is a travesty of justice that someone like Shahryar Kabir, a global hero of human rights and minority rights, is currently in jail in Bangladesh because of his human rights activity, because of his activity and years of activism dealing with genocide commemoration and genocide denial. There's one more figure, very well known internationally from Bangladesh, who I also had the chance to meet just briefly in Poland during a summit of Nobel Peace Prize winners. That is, of course, Mr. Yunus. And of course, for Bangladesh can be proud of having a of repression against human rights activists and political opposition, as well as minorities, is happening under the watch of a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And the issue of the current rise and the emboldening of extremist groups in Bangladesh is very concerning indeed. And also the fact that it is happening under the watch of a Nobel Peace Prize winner, well, that is highly ironic and sad. And I would like to use this opportunity to appeal to Mr. Yunus. Please free Shahryar Kabir. Please free the political prisoners and independent journalists in Bangladesh today. I believe the global human rights movement will truly appreciate an improvement in the situation of minorities in Bangladesh, independent journalists, and human rights activists. Thank you very much for having me today. Joy Bangla.
Thank you, Dr. Rafael, and thank you for pointing out the plight of prisoner of conscience, I would say, a human rights activist par excellence. Shahryar Kabir is a journalist and a prolific writer, and we must raise our voice globally, and we request the distinguished panel to raise your voice globally to the corridor of power for his release, as well as the release of other journalists and the political leaders and the parliamentarians in Bangladesh. Thank you again, Professor Rafael. Our next guest is Dr. Nur Nabi, fondly known as Nabi Bhai across both sides of Atlantic all the way to the sands of Pacific. He's a valiant freedom fighter of 1971 Liberation War. He's been elected 4 times as the council member at the Plainsboro County, New Jersey. He's also the recipient of the second highest national accolade, Ekushi Padak, I believe in 2020. And he's the leading voice against all kinds of oppressions. Very well known among the Bangladeshi diaspora, both in US and Europe. Dr. Nur Nabi, please. No voice.
All these distinguished speakers. Before I discuss about my topics, I would like to make some points. Number one is the events that happened last year is not a revolution, it's not an uprising. It was a orchestrated with millions of dollars conspiracy to oust the elected government of Sheikh Hasina. And these conspirators were outside forces like America, United Nations, European countries, Pakistan. Lately, we hear the name of Qatar, Turkey. So it was not a revolution, it was not an uprising. When Sheikh Hasina was forced to leave the country, he left Bangladesh as a model for economic development and a peaceful nation, security for every citizen. Now what Yunus did during last 15 months is that he transformed the country to a failed state, and it's a heaven for the terrorists, the militants. Now I would like to share my concern facing 180 million people of Bangladesh. The consequence of these issues will not only affect Bangladesh, but also the region and across the globe. What are those issues? They are corruption, human rights violation, rise of Islamist terrorism, sponsored by Dr. Muhammad Yunus and his regime. However, I will focus only on the rise of religious extremism in Bangladesh and regional instability, which I'm assigned to talk about. Let's talk about who is Dr. Yunus. He is currently the illegal, I repeat, illegal ruler of Bangladesh. He was installed as a chief advisor of the interim government of Bangladesh by removing a legal government of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, as I mentioned, through international and domestic conspiracies. And they used money. Just the US President Donald Trump mentioned that just last 1 year, $29 million was given to Bangladesh directly, and 21 million came through India from just one US agency, which is USAID. And moreover, there are other agencies who are involved like RII, Deep State, so on. So this conspiracy conducted by millions of dollars. Just 1 year, $50 million, but if we take account of last 16 years conspiracy against Sheikh Hasina's government, it total to some extent about $200 million. So it was not a revolution, not a uprising, it was a anarchy and a terrorism, militant activity hired with this $200 million cash during last 15 years. Now, let me give you some evidence to my topics. I will provide evidence that Dr. Yunus and his regime are promoting religious extremism in Bangladesh and I'll discuss its impact on regional instability. Let's talk about the sponsoring of rise of religious extremism in Bangladesh by Yunus governments. After assuming power, first thing he did was releasing all the terrorists from the prisons. After August 5, 2024, militants who were sentenced and under trial have been released from the prison without any legal process. A report published by BBC reported that 300 accused in militant cases have been released. Among them were 10 accused top terrorists, 8 accused in the 10-truck arms smuggling case, and also members of at least 10 organizations were built without, militants were built without legal process. The extreme group whose members were released are Al-Qaeda affiliated Ansarullah Bangla team, and ISIS affiliated offshoot Neo Jamatul Mujahideen Bangladesh, a newer Al-Qaeda inspired group. And all these members of all these are reported to getting training in the Chittagong hill tracks area. That means whatever has been done subversive activities so far, we must apprehend that there will be more violent activity by these groups who is Yunus released from the prisons. These terrorist groups are displaying their presence in public. They were showing flags of militant organization in the procession on the streets of Bangladesh. They have openly displayed the flags of ISIS on the streets of Dhaka and held demonstration and procession under the banners of banned militant organization. The banned organization of Hizbutul Tahiri held a large public procession in Dhaka on March 7, 2025 with prior announcement, but the law enforcement agencies have not taken any effective measures, and the DMP commissioner has recently said there was no militants in the country. Regarding the recent arrest of 36 Bangladeshi militants in Malaysia, the Home Affairs advisor said there was no militancy in Bangladesh. These religious extreme groups attack on minority communities. 2,442 incidents of communal attacks and violence occurred in previous 11 months since August 2024. In the first half of this year, Bangladesh has witnessed 258 incidents of violence against the minority communities, including Hindus. Of the total incidents, there were 20 incidents of rape, 59 attacks on places of worship. I'm talking about just 5 months this year. These militants are also attacking and looting shrines, bowl gathering, and socio-cultural events. This group also doing illegal activities which affected the numbers on murder, sexual harassment, and rape in Bangladesh. In addition to mob violence, the number of violent incidents against women has increased. According to official statistics, 12,726 cases of violence against women and children and 4,105 cases of rape have occurred from September 24 to June 25 of this year. Child murder and torture, as well as the insecurity of transgender community, also increased. These religious militants are also obstructing women's sports and cultural activities. So what is the impact of the rise of religious extremism and religious regional instability by these terrorists. Rise of religious extremism in Bangladesh threats regional security, particularly against India as well as Southeast Asia. Through transnational militant networks, radicalization of migrant workers, and use of modern financing methods, increasing the instability of the region, in the region. Threats against India is significant because of geographical proximity and similar demography. Moreover, Bangladesh is surrounded by India with a kind of porous border. Migration of militants to Indian neighboring state is a potential threat to the national security and stability of India. In mid-2025, Malaysian authority dismantled an Islamic State-inspired network that had recruited dozens of Bangladeshi migrant workers in the country. The group Garakan Militant Radical Bangladesh used social media and mobile banking system to recruit members, conduct allegiance ceremonies, and funds ISI operations abroad. The discovery of Bangladeshi militant network in Malaysia required cooperative efforts between Malaysian and Bangladeshi authorities. This kind of cooperation is not possible under the current hostile policy of Yunus governments toward India. This is an additional negative factor in this matter. What are the mitigation and challenges in this matter? They are counterterrorism cooperation, border security, and intelligence sharing, combating online radicalization, and addressing judicial backlogs. We just heard from Ambassador Sikri that Bangladesh government of Yunus are inviting these radical speakers like from India and Julkan Nayak and some speaker from Pakistan. This is also will pose a threat to the subcontinent stability. These policies of mitigation are only possible under a democratic government, not under illegal and radical government like Dr. Yunus. I have presented evidence that Dr. Yunus is not an ambassador of peace as perceived by the West. Rather, he is a sponsor of violence and terrorism. We are afraid that if he remains in power, he will complete his mission in converting Bangladesh to a failed state and as a haven for religious extremism. Therefore, Dr. Yunus' regime must be removed to save Bangladesh. Not today, not tomorrow. His government must be removed yesterday, have been removed yesterday. So what is the solution to peaceful solution to the Bangladesh crisis is that Yunus government must be removed. There should be a take care government under president, free and fair inclusive election, including Army League and others. This is the only solution. Otherwise, Yunus is inviting a global proxy war in Bangladesh, and this Yunus government's promoting the radicalization of the Islamist militants and helping getting into the crisis of Burma's crisis. Then India and China and Russia will not be sitting idle. And we heard that the Pakistan ISI agents are roaming in Bangladesh and they are training these radical Islamists, including the Rohingya refugees, to make an attack, this fundamental attack by these fundamentalist militants against India and promoting or provoking a conflict between Bangladesh and Pakistan, Bangladesh and India, which eventually will turn Bangladesh a battlefield of regional war, as well as the proxy battlefield from the superpower. So Yunus government must be gone, and international community must raise their voice that Yunus is a threat to the sovereignty, independence of Bangladesh. And why we are asking international support? Because international community, with the help of West, America and others, they install this puppet, Yunus, in Bangladesh. So it is their responsibility to remove this puppet and help Bangladesh to continue the peaceful path to the development and a society based on secularism and a democratic system. So thanks for sharing my views and listening to me. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu.
Thank you, Dr. Nabi, for your thoughtful presentation and the evidence that you have presented and the evidence that Dr. Millat had presented before. One word comes to my mind is ochlocracy. This is a Greek word that means mobocracy orchestrated by the government. And Dr. Yunus' regime is doing exactly that, basically to unravel Bangladesh into total anarchy and chaos. My next guest and the last guest on this topic of rise of religious extremism and regional instability is Barrister Taposh Kanti Baul. He's an international human rights lawyer and defender. He's based in Germany. Mr. Taposh Kanti Baul.
Thank you, Mr. Rana, and distinguished guests. I'm not going to waste the time by addressing everyone, but it is my pleasure and honor to be present in this conference. The main discussion is that what is the situation of religious minorities in Bangladesh? We all know that after 5th of August, the religious and ethnic minorities were attacked. Without any doubt, they were attacked. Their temples were vandalized. Their all sorts of homes and business institutions were vandalized. Bangladesh Hindu Buddhist Christian Unity Council, in their report, they said that within 15 days, from 5th of August to 20th of August, there were more than 2,000 incidents that took place. And the range of incidents are murder, rape, forced conversion, destruction of temples and business and home institutions. What was their crime? Their crime is, first of all, they are Hindus. And as a Hindu, people automatically think that they are affiliated with India, they are affiliated with Bangladesh Awami League. This is true that to the Hindu majority people, Hindu community, they think that Awami League is the vanguard of secularism. If Awami League is there, their rights are protected. And that's why election after election, they have voted for Bangladesh Awami League. It is clear from the events that took place after this that why they have voted for Bangladesh Awami League. Not only this is the situation, you see that after 5th of August, anyone who has a secular voice, like Sharia Kabir, anyone who was talking about religious and ethnic minorities, like Chinmoy Prabhu, who is a ISKCON, who is a religious master from ISKCON. So all of them are thrown behind the bar. They are in prison in fictitious cases. Even anyone like me who are in the secular movement, who are working for the empowerment of religious and ethnic minorities, they have filed thousands of cases against them. So in this situation, the meticulous design of the Yunus government is pretty clear. First one is to silence their voice, and how to silence their voice? Through mob attack. Yes, the term we are using is mob attack, but when there is a difference between mob attack and criminals, right? What is the difference? That when there is a mob attack, then we will see that random people are attacking those places. But when we are talking about criminals, we will see that the same faces are appearing again and again. So this was not a mob attack. This was identified criminals who attacked all sorts of institutions, of religious and ethnic minorities. The same faces came up over and over again if you look into the videos that appeared right after this 5th of August. So then we are seeing right now that forced religious conversion is on the rise right now after 5th of August, because Hizbut Tahrir, Jamaati Islami, and all sorts of Hefazat and everyone is forcing and targeting young Hindus for that, young Christians and Buddhists for that. Apart from that, that if you are a rebellious young boy or a girl, what will happen? Your Facebook, your social media will be hacked, and those very people will attack your house. They will try to kill you at first. If they don't manage to kill you, they will beat you up, they will lynch you and your family, destroy your home, your neighborhood, and the whole village. And then they will, then the police will come to take you. They will take you to CMH, in the military hospital, where you will be treated. Like Utshab Mondal, what happened to Utshab Mondal we don't know till today. Just the other day, there is this incident against a Buet student, just being said that he said something on certain social media, and then the radical students of Buet, they basically alleged that he raped a Muslim girl, but there was no victim there, and the Dhaka Metropolitan Police said that there was no such incident of rape. But what happened in the meantime? That boy's name and his family name is defamed all over. He is in jail and his studentship is cancelled. So these religious extremism is growing under Yunus, and people are living the worst time of their life. Yes, it is true that people will say that religious minorities are targeted under every government, or over the last 50 years they were targeted. But within the same, like after within 1 year span, such kind of violation and violence did not happen. Just a few days ago, people started to target ISKCON, and they are saying that it is a terrorist organization, and for this reason they are asking the government, forcing the government to disband them. And this is what is happening not only to the religious minorities of Bangladesh. This is the same in ethnic minorities in the hill tracts. Even the lowland ethnic people like Shantals, Oraos, they are facing the worst time of their life, because their lands are getting grabbed, their schools are closed, all sorts of benefit they used to receive from the government, they are closed for a longer period of time. Hence, I would urge to the international community that please stand with the religious and ethnic minorities of Bangladesh, save us from this tyrant Dr. Yunus. He may have received the Nobel Peace Prize, but he is the reason for what the peaceful life of Bangladesh's religious and ethnic minorities are completely destroyed. Please help us to save the secular nature of Bangladesh. Once again, thank you, the organizers, for organizing this timely conference, and all the speakers for listening me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barrister Tapush Kanti Bowl. You have rightly said that